Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Writeous Incarnation. I'm gonna hit you with something that just occurred to me, a mini epiphany that I had while writing this morning. It was a bit of a grind. It's been a bit of a grind in both sessions that I've done. Yes, I missed out on Monday. I'll get to that in a second. But the thing that hit me was, we always think about being out of shape or shaking the rust off when it comes to like athletic sports or performance type functions or jobs or tasks. We allow ourselves to admit that, okay, you know what, I'm a little out of practice. It's been a while since I've done this. It's kind of like, riding a bicycle. You figure it out once you've done it once, but it still doesn't mean that you're amazing on that bicycle. If you haven't ridden a bike for a while, you may have the balance down, but you're not doing anything fancy schmancy, and maybe you go a little bit wobbly here and there. It takes a little bit of time, and the more complicated the task, the more skill-oriented it is, and the more cumulative it is. It's something that is going to take a little bit longer to get back into the routine if you haven't done it. And I realized I have not done anything to flex the writing muscle in years. I mean, nothing at all. And we kind of, I didn't realize it or it didn't occur to me because, I'm writing emails and I'm sending texts and I'm making posts and I'm writing little things here and there, but those are blurbs. They are kind of the real life essay type things. They're just kind of matter of fact things. That's not how you write a story or the way you tell a story or the way I ideally personally want to write things. So I'm incredibly out of practice. That muscle has atrophied over years of not using it. And so I'm shaking the rust off. And that was kind of I don't know about encouragement, but it helped me understand a little bit better why the writing has been slow and why I feel like it is very clunky. It's functional. It's like, okay, I've told you what I wanted to tell you, but I didn't tell you it in a way that is particularly interesting or has any kind of energy or drive. And while I've kind of reconciled the fact that the way I draw my artwork is probably not going to have that because I'm not in a place where I'm able, I think, or willing to hone the craft. I think I'm starting off in a better place with writing. I think out of the gate, I'm a better writer than I am an artist. Which is not to say I'm amazing at either one, but I know that I'm better with that. So I think I can become more fluid and more energetic and more effusive in my prose than I can in, say, a piece of artwork. And so I expect to be able to do that. And I know I can, but again, just been out of practice. I don't think I've been more out of practice, more out of shape than I am right now. So that was a little bit of a realization that this is shaking the rust off, and it is the consequence of me not honing the craft, which brings me to another point that I know people have heard, but it's something I have to remind myself of. Like I said, I missed out on Monday. I don't know why. I don't know what I thought I had better to do for that hour in the morning on Monday, but I didn't do it. I think it was my alarm went off and I was like, no, there's no way. I turned it off. And that's another thing. I actually work from home now. And so I don't have to be, I have to be at my desk working at a certain time, but I don't have to be up early in order to get stuff done before work, because if I mosey in, do some stuff, I can, jump downstairs and do my laundry. Like I'm not on a tight schedule. So that discipline has also atrophied, and that's leaked into other parts of my life. But the discipline or the truism about discipline is any day that you spend working out, writing, whatever it is on any level is infinitely and exponentially more, exponentially better than if you don't. And I mean that literally exponentially. It's like compounding interest. It's like the effect that comes from doing just a little bit every day. And part of the problem is, I think, I get in my head anyway, I'm looking at a big problem or a big task, and I correlate that to, but that's big picture. That's big picture, long term. It's huge. It's big. It's this 500-page manuscript. And I look at but I'm judging my day to day against that bigger picture and going, well, what is it? It's a drop in the bucket. Well, yes, but I can't compare a daily habit or a daily expenditure or a daily endeavor against a big picture 2, 3, 4, 5-year project. It's not fair, and it skews the values of it in my head where I go, okay, you know what? I can miss a day. The problem is, every day that I miss, I'm losing that compounding interest. It's kind of like bowling. If you're bowling and you hit 3 strikes in a row, if you miss one strike, just one strike, you've lost all that momentum, all the because all the frames carry over. And so, but as soon as you miss out a strike, and I'm pretty sure even a spare, they all land right there. It doesn't carry over. It doesn't keep building. That's probably not the greatest example. I'm not as familiar with bowling, but I do remember it was being crazy. Like, you can get 300, but if you miss one strike, you're obviously you're not going to get 300. But anyway, let me stop talking about bowling when I don't know enough about bowling. But it is exponential. And so even that 10-minute workout, that 5-minute walk, you go, you know what? The experts tell me I need to do at least 20 minutes to get my heart rate up and to maintain it for another 5 or whatever to get any kind of really discernible value from it. That's probably true. But it doesn't mean that if you can only do 5 minutes, you doing 5 minutes is not exponentially better than you doing nothing at all. And it's the same thing with writing. Every day that I spend writing that hour is exponentially better. At the end of a year, even if I miss a lot of days because, doing things, traveling, whatever happens. So let's say I only do 300 days out of the year. 300 hours of writing? I mean, and that's what you apply against the big picture. It's not the hour a day, which, is not even at this point yielding me a page of material. It's you go, okay, a year is still not even big picture. Again, a project like this is probably going to take 2 to 3 years. But you look at that 1 year and go, okay, no, that's a significant deal. 300 hours, I guarantee you the results of that are going to be significant. That's probably at least a third, if not a half, of the story written, if not more. I mean, if I start, and that's the thing, as the more momentum I gain, I write more, maybe God forbid, I'll actually start writing for an hour and a half or 2 hours because I'm enjoying it, because I'm getting back in the rhythm of things. It's just like, trying to work out. If you haven't worked out in a long time, every exercise you do makes you incredibly sore in places that you didn't even know you had muscles. And that's not fun. That's not enjoyable. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a grind. This is a grind. This, all of it hurts. It all sucks. And you're not really feeling, you're not getting the endorphin rush necessarily. You're not feeling intoxicated by the process. You're not, particularly enjoying it. But if you push through that to the point where you are, it's still going to be a strain. You're still going to be, have a hard time, but you're not going to be exhausted, like drop dead tired by the end of it. I think it took me a week or two. That was about it, of regular exercise, to go from drop dead exhausted, can barely move when I'm done, to, okay, I'm tired, but I'm walking out of the gym on my own power versus somebody having to cart me out. That's kind of the difference. And I'm expecting that as I keep going. And in fact, it happened a little bit. I wrote for an hour on, I guess it was Sunday. I think it was Sunday when I did this video. Yeah, because I missed Monday. So Sunday, I woke up, I did that hour of writing, did my first video. And then Monday, even though I didn't actually do any writing, it was kind of bothering me a little bit because I only got 3 paragraphs done. And I don't want these videos to necessarily be a status report on, like, let me check in and let you know I got this many paragraphs done in this many words, and I thought it was good, or I thought it was a bummer. I don't want it to be that per se. I want it to be more big picture, more about the process and everything, as I said before. But in times like this, I think it's important to say, I spent an hour and I got 3 paragraphs. And to make it even worse, they were essentially just me transcribing what I'd already written for the screenplay. I'm describing a room. And I know that may sound incredibly dull. It's a decision I made. I think it works because of how things go down. But I had to grapple with myself on that too. I'm like, is this really how I want to start this out? Because in a movie, if I'm describing, or, in the script, if it just says, pans across room, sees this, this, and this, it doesn't take much on there. And when you're watching it, I mean, you can have this credits going up at that point. People aren't really, they're not looking at that as okay, the clock's ticking, hey. But clock's ticking, hey? Clock is ticking here. But when it's a book, if you go an entire page and you haven't gotten to any action, you haven't really talked about the character, people are going to start going, hey, what Tolkien? I mean, no offense to Tolkien at all, but I mean, one thing, whether you like it or not, he is very descriptive. He can be very descriptive. He can go on for quite some time just describing the Shire, describing the trees and describing how the grass is growing and all of that kind of thing. And you could say it's great world building. It fills makes everything more robust, leaves less to the imagination, and allows his words to impress upon you the reality of his world, of Middle Earth. But that does slow down the pacing a bit. And for me, I think starting off slow, starting off bright, starting off chipper, I want to juxtapose that with how things go later on. So I think it's okay to start slow, to ease into it. But anyway, I don't want to, like I said, I want to get too specific. But so I'm describing, this room. But in my head, I'm hearing the voices in my head, and I know that sounds crazy to say, but we all have them if you're sitting down to write, you're sitting down to do anything, especially if it's creative. There's something in your head that's not you saying, oh, people are going to think this is lame, or that's just dumb, or whatever. It's not productive because when it's your brain, when it's, you're thinking, make this better. Like, how can I make this better? You're looking at a sentence, you read a sentence, it's not what you want it to be. You're looking at it and go, no, it has to have a little more pizzazz, needs to have whatever. Your brain doesn't naturally think this sucks. Your brain doesn't naturally think, people are going to think that it's too slow, or, why did I ever bother starting this? Or do I really have any talent at all? That's not your brain. Our brains are much more proactive and much more productive than that. Our own thoughts are looking at something and problem solving. Our own thoughts are looking at it and going, okay, here's how I can make it better. Here's what I need to do. It's looking at it a little more objectively. Whatever those however you want to think about it. I mean, obviously people have different beliefs and worldviews and everything, but putting it this way, it's not me. It's not my thought process. Those thoughts aren't worth my time. All they're doing is making me second guess. And the thing is, I have actually allowed myself to be cut short. I've allowed my efforts to be cut short by listening to that voice and going, yeah, no, this is, I'm getting nowhere with this. This is not going anywhere. Instead of just going, you know what? It doesn't matter. This is not the final thing. I don't have to have this be the final draft, which is something that is incredibly hard for me to wrap my head around, because I am, in my family line, there is a, I'll call it a vice of perfection. Excellence is great. Pursuing excellence is fantastic. Pursuing perfection is a dead end. It is going to cripple you. It is going to make everything you do feel like crap, because it isn't perfect. It never will be. I mean, even if I wrote the screenplay for Shawshank Redemption or Jerry Maguire, I like Jerry Maguire. I think it's a great film. If I wrote the screenplay for either of those, they still aren't perfect. And if I was striving for perfection, I would be throwing out draft after draft after draft, trying to get it absolutely perfect. Going for excellence is great, perfection not. So as I'm looking at something, I'm like, this is not perfect. This isn't the way I want it. And I have a fear, and it is a fear because it's unjustified. There's no reason for me to be afraid of this. Although it is the consequence is real. The consequence of, like, say I go down, because I mentioned before, I can do a kind of a general outline. I know the beginning, the end, basic relationships, basic characters, and I'll figure out their age and kind of how they relate to each other. But after that, I want to explore the story. I want the characters to tell the story. I want to put them in situations. And in my head, I'm going, okay, this is the boy meets girl scene, or, part of the book. This is the chapter where boy meets girl. And in my head, they're going to talk and they're going to hit it off, and goes on from there. That may not be what ends up happening. Maybe because I've already set up this person's attitude, this person's mindset, when he comes up, maybe she's not receptive to it. This is a boy meets girl, but this is a boy meets girl, and they bounce off each other. This is not the time for them to connect. And I want that to be organic. I want that to come from the moment, putting those characters in that and let them kind of, play it out in my head. And if it doesn't feel right, not going to do it. I'm not going to try to force it just for the sake of it. Now, that doesn't mean that at some point I'm going to have to, because you go, okay, maybe naturally this wouldn't happen, but we kind of need this part to happen at this time. So we're going to kind of truncate it a little bit and round off the edges, sand it down to make it as dovetailed as possible, and make sure it fits as well as possible. But it's not going to be, again, perfect, because we are condensing this for the sake of storytelling. But I think that's more adaptation, to film, to a shorter, tighter, faster medium than it is necessarily a book. But that is kind of the way that I want to pursue this. I mentioned it in the end of the last video. I'm more of a, give me a slab of granite. I need to create a slab of granite with my words. Create this big thing with everything, every idea I have, every thought, as much as possible, put it down there. Doesn't matter if it's too verbose, doesn't matter if there's too much dialogue, doesn't matter if they go back and forth too much. That's fine. Creating this big granite block. And then I can take my chisel. And that's actually fun for me. There's nothing more lonely, more discouraging, and more ugly to me than a blank page. Writing is a very lonely process, at least for me. Some people, I know Denise, when we've talked, she actually, it's a very occupied space. It's a very lively process. For me, it's a very lonely process because I don't have that interaction necessarily. I can watch things happen, but it's a very detached, and it's through a shroud, through a veil. I'm not really seeing it as clearly as I probably would like to or want to. And I hear things more than not. I hear the dialogue. I hear sound. It's very strange how the brain works. But anyway, it's different for different folks. But for me, it's a very lonely process. And I don't enjoy it exactly. It doesn't give me a thrill. It doesn't give me a rush because, like I said, if for no other reason, when I get done with my hour, I've got this half a page maybe, or even a full page. And yeah, it's filled with black text. It's not just a white page, but it hasn't come alive because you can't see, you have to read it to make it come alive. And then when I read it, I'm going, okay, I don't like that part. I don't like that part. Let me switch this over here. And it becomes a mess. So it's a very lonely process. What I do enjoy though, is taking the chisel and starting to form the shapes. Forming the granite is a pain in the butt. But in my process, that's how I work. And then I form it out of there versus the analogy I made before was kind of like a model kit where you say, okay, here's this piece, this piece, this piece, and you form a skeleton. And which I know some people who do like Gundam like statues, models, they're humanoid in appearance or in shape, but they are machines. They're supposed to be like giant robots essentially. But they actually have a skeleton. You put kind of the skeleton together, which would be, your outline, and then you actually put the pieces together like you would a normal model. And that's, I think, what an outline process is, and you kind of build it up that way. And then you can refine it and, switch pieces around here and there. And I don't mean to downplay that. I think that's a great process and it works for a lot of folks. For me, when I do that, I actually have, I probably still have it somewhere. I have like 15 pages, single-spaced pages of backstory, of character notes. They're just meandering. They're not purpose-driven. And they have some purpose. If I'm developing a relationship between this, or if I want two characters to interact who know each other, I should know what their history is. I should know how they relate to each other. Are they in a good relationship, bad relationship? What is the dynamic of their friendship? Is there something more? Does he want there to be something more? Does she want something to be something more? Have they no interest in each other at all? Did they have a past? Did they not? I mean, all of that is going to impact how they interact and, what the dialogue is like, how the scene is going to play out. But trying to work all of that out beforehand for me was a momentum killer. So when I got done with those 15 pages, that wasn't even everything. That was just like the main like 4 characters and going back in my mind enough and spreading, fleshing them out enough that I could approach the story properly. But here's the thing. This is the same thing with acting. Acting, you can tell me as an actor, okay, you are, you're a little bit at ease. You're not at ease. You're in a new environment, so you're a little bit on edge. You've got a little bit of a buzz going. You're jealous of that person over there. You see him with your ex-girlfriend, so you're a little jealous. You're a little antagonized by that. But you're also scared and nervous because there's somebody else over there that you want to talk to, but you're not sure how she's going to take it. And you can layer all those things on there. There is no way in heck I am going to be able to portray all of those things at the same time. You're not going to know what it is. It would be a muddied mess. You'd see me going, like it's not going to work. And then granted, you shouldn't be portraying emotions in a linear fashion anyway. Not like, oh, now I'm scared. Now I'm this, now I'm that. But all those layers, it's going to look like just a big muddy mess. If you try to layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, you're not going to see anything. And so you got to focus on what mannerisms you can do, what things you can do that are showing different elements, but no, you're not trying to emote all of them at the same time. You're not trying to do everything at the same time. And it's the same thing with our characters. When we flesh out these characters, all that backstory is not going to come out in the dialogue. All that backstory is not going to necessarily come out in their attitude towards each other or in this particular scene. Maybe all the subjects that would cause antagonism between the two based on their history, it doesn't actually come up. And so you have to either force something to get conflict or it just doesn't have conflict for whatever reason. But I bogged myself down with those details and it took all the momentum out and I kind of went dry. It was like, it was just like a desert. Like my motivation, my inspiration, my passion just kind of became a desert because it was all about the nuts and bolts and very little of it actually was going to benefit the story. So I've learned from myself, everything that I've ever written, almost everything that I've ever written has been pretty much off the cuff. Like I said, I have a general sense where I want to go, where I'm starting from, the characters involved, and I just start going. And for me, that's the process that works. I need to have the momentum going. And like I said, you get that granite, you get that big slab, and I start chiseling, and then I can go, oh, no, you know what? Actually, I don't like that part there, or I want to move this over here. And that's where my analogy kind of breaks down because typically when you're doing a statue, you're not taking sections from over here and putting it over here or re-putting things assembling. It's more like clay, I guess, would be a more apt deal. But I like granite because it's, rock. But but it is kind of like more like clay, where you're taking pieces here and there. And I'll be honest, that is, as I mentioned before, my big fear is having 300 pages and at 275 realizing, oh crap, I needed to have established this character earlier on, because right now they're coming in it seems like they're coming in out of the blue, or that they're taking this stance out of the blue. I needed to have them have a scene earlier, or a chapter earlier, where we see them interact, or we hear them talk to somebody else about this, so we know this character exists, and we know that they have this certain perspective on this, or that they have this certain desire, so that when this happens, it's more motivated. It flows in, and I probably need to flesh them out a little bit more, so that it's not just, oh, here I am, hello, and here I am over here doing the thing, hello, and that's it. If I'm going to include them at all, they need to have a through line. They need to have a reason for being there. They need to have some kind of progress, and I need them to be a fleshed out character. I need them to be rounded, not just an extra essentially in the story, unless of course they are just an extra. But I don't know how that works. I'll have to get to cross that bridge when I come to it. But that fear is, if I don't plan everything out, I'm going to have to go back and do revisions. I'm going to have to add sections in this book and comb through 200 pages to find that right spot to do it. And yeah, that's going to be not quite as fun, trying to work things in there. And then it has a ripple effect. The character that they were having an interaction has been swapped out. So now I've established that character, but now the one that got booted out, I have to figure out something with them. So it can get messy, but you see, already I'm kind of off the jump, daunting myself and already thinking about all the worst case scenarios and how horrible that will be. But the fact is, ultimately, like that is how things happen. When I alluded to Tolkien before, I mentioned him before, and talked about, the different revisions he went through. You know how long Lord of the Rings is. And he went through revision after revision after revision. But also, on a side note, on a tangent, kind of what I'm talking about letting the characters kind of tell the story versus me trying to figure it all out beforehand. When you look at the ending for Return of the King, which, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movies or read the books, spoiler alert here, but at the end, Frodo gets he's right there on the precipice. He's right there on the doorstep, right where he needs to be, right where Isildur was so long ago. And all he has to do is take the ring off, or take the ring and throw it in. And he doesn't. He claims it from his own, despite the fact that he's a good-natured hobbit and all this stuff, and he's got this strong will. At the very end, he capes. At the end, he buckles and he puts the ring on. And you're thinking, because otherwise it takes away from the stakes of what the ring really was able to do. If you go, well, if a hobbit can just say, screw you, Sauron, and your magic ring, it ain't no thing, I'll just chuck it in there, then it kind of diminishes all the strife and all the hubbub and all the hullabaloo that was put on, was put onto the ring, it was put onto Sauron. If you just go, oh, well, just one plucky hobbit just went, no, you're not gonna screw with me. No, it needed to grab him. It needed to ultimately prevail over him. And in the book, all that happens, Gollum, I guess, figures out where Bilbo is, or Frodo is, wrestles with him, finds the ring finger, bites it off. Frodo falls, is rolling on the ground, holding his bloody hand. Gollum pulls the finger out of the ring, looks at it, and starts dancing about, I believe the book says, like a mad thing, or dancing madly about, celebrating the fact that he's been reunited with his precious. And as he's celebrating in his jubilee, he loses his footing and just topples into Mount Doom with a final scream of precious. That's it. There's no fight. Frodo doesn't do anything. Sam doesn't do anything. It's just Gollum gets what he finally wants and is so ecstatic about it, he loses himself and falls in. Now, granted, he did say, he did swear on the precious. Now, I don't remember if Tolkien actually ties that in, but he swears that he will not harm Frodo or Sam, or at least Frodo, on the precious. And he says he won't do it on pain of whatever. So I don't know if that was, in theory, like the curse, coming to fruition. Okay, he has hurt Frodo. Now the ring is paying him back. I don't know how all that works. But Tolkien did say that he kind of let that play out the way he felt it naturally would, that Frodo would have to succumb, that Sam wouldn't be able to really get in there. Gollum had already kind of, hit him upside the head with a rock. And it wasn't going to be any like just like the idea of it was not, it was, it's not going to be the might of a man or the king or the hero or anything that is going to ultimately prevail. It's going to be a humble hobbit. At the same time, it's the humble hobbit still ultimately was going to fail, just like the men did. Isildur, Frodo made the same decision that Isildur did back in the day, the kings of old and the men of old. But it was, I want to call it fate. It was something greater than them that ultimately pushed it over. It's like Frodo carried it as far as he could, and then fate, or how, I can't remember what destiny or whatever, however you want to think of it, is what ultimately kind of gave it the final push and ended it. But obviously they adapted it. When they adapted it for the movie, they were like, we can't have it just be our heroes are on the ground and Gollum just dances himself into the fire. There needs to be conflict. And so we have Frodo getting back up and trying to wrestle with him, and then he falls over the side, and there's whole grab my hand and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I understand why you need to do that, but to me it was like, they're going to survive. The only question essentially was when it's erupting, and Frodo says, "I'm glad you're here with me, Sam, here at the end of all things." And you go, okay, maybe it's going to be a bittersweet thing. In the movie anyway, you can think that, but in the book, I'm pretty sure you kind of know they're going to pull it out. But in any case, I'm not trying. I want to go off on a Lord of the Rings thing, but just to say that even then, the ending, the big climactic scene, Tolkien didn't have it all figured out when he sat down to do it. He just let it play out, and the way it played out naturally wasn't necessarily the most flashy or the most spectacular. Now, I already know how I want mine to end, and that's very much in my head. Like I know how it's going to go down, and I think it works. I think it's good, and it helps me because I can try to build towards that. I can try to, I don't know, like already be thinking how I want to do different parts and how I want it to start out to arrive at that place in the best way possible. But in any case, sorry, just checking on the time here. In any case, the big deal was, just to let you know, I only got, my point is, but all that to say, there's so much that can get in the way of moving forward. And the worst thing that we can do is let something take our momentum. Figure out how we work best, whether that's the outline, whether that's just run and gun, and build that big block and start chiseling away. Because I'll be honest, the chiseling I like going through and editing. And I don't know if it's an age thing or it developed over time or whatever, but I don't have an attachment to what I write anymore. Or at least it's a very short-lived. Even when I finish something, the very next day I can look at it as an editor, and the writer in me isn't going, oh, but this is what I was trying to do, or oh, but I really like this part. The editor in me just goes, nope, let's take that out altogether. That's too verbose. Let's switch this around. And it's really nice. And I enjoy that process. And so I keep telling myself, if I just create enough of an out, if I, create a good enough humanoid structure-ish thing out of clay or granite or whatever it is, then I can go back, have fun, and chisel it all out. And the way I write, I was never one of those people that was, trying, doing whatever I needed to do or whatever I could do to make my page count longer in school. I always had probably 3 or 4 pages more than what they asked for. And if anything, I had to pare it down. I'm actually very weak when it comes to abstracts, when it comes to trying to condense things down. One of the many reasons why I never got involved in Twitter, I was like, why am I going to talk on a platform that's limiting me to 120 words or whatever that count was? Like, I can't say anything on 120 words. It's just not me. So, but that's a weakness. That's something I need to do better at. But it's easier for me to take 500 words and chisel it down to 200 than it is for me to take 200 and try to make it longer, stretch it out. And I guess that was the other thing I would say as well. Again, with that voice in the head, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but when we're writing, to not let second guess ourselves and try to, like, for example, if I know that I've only got a 500 word count, I need to keep that on my mind. I know how long that is. It's about a page. So I want to kind of wrap it up, at a certain place. I want to start kind of trying to put that bow on it, land the plane, as it were. But I'm not going to write every sentence with that word count in mind. I'm not going to try to, I guess, artificially impose a limitation on my brain, on the way I'm thinking, on the way I want to write, in order to fulfill a requirement. If I'm thinking, when I was writing a screenplay, I'm thinking, okay, the first 15 pages should be the rising, like the exposition, getting everything in place. The world, the people, everything that's going on, and the not triggering action. I mean, it has a better word. The not instigating. It's Something action. I think it's like the instigating action, the big moment where things change, the modus operandi, the status quo changes, and it launches our character into that story, into the story. And typically, it should be 12 to 15. It shouldn't be any more than 12 to 15 pages in. Some are a more slow burn, and you can get away with that. But as a general rule, 12 to 15 pages. But I had to tell myself, stop trying to write. Make sure that this whole thing ends at page 15. Write whatever it is, let it go, let it flow, let it all out, and then go back and pare it down. Because trying to limit myself, trying to limit ourselves, trying to, shore up weaknesses as we're writing, I think that's going to become discouraging. We're going to be spinning our wheels and we're not going to get as far. It just needs to come out as much as possible. That said, my progress to this point is about a page, 2 hours, about a page. And I already knew almost exactly what I was trying to say. And I had a moment where, I'm thinking there like, oh my gosh, like what does she have on her walls? What would she have? And I got to start thinking about those things. I hadn't figured that out, but it's better for me to figure that out as I'm writing this chapter than it would be for me to try to sort that out before I started, because like I said, it just kills the momentum. So every day that we write, every day we put something on paper is exponentially better. We're getting ourselves in the habit and in the discipline of writing. We're shaking off the rust. We're building up those muscles little by little, and we have something to show for it. At the end of the week, I'm going to have 3 or 4 pages, and even already then, that doesn't necessarily compare to the 400 pages probably or 500 pages this is going to be. That's still 4 pages more than if I'd done nothing at all. But I'm not even doing all that much. It's just an hour. And I'm a task-oriented person. I typically would say I need to write a page a day. But I'm taking that parameter off myself, that burden, I guess, off myself, and just saying, you know what? All you got to do is just sit down with purpose to write for an hour. And however much you get, even if you get a sentence, that's good enough. And I think that's what I needed. That's what I need to be able to move forward and feel like, okay, I accomplished something, just give it an hour. And I think, even though first day, 3 small paragraphs, and it was all written in the present tense, and I had to go back and change it. So it's good that I didn't get very far, but I already had to, because it was written in present tense in the script. And so I wasn't even thinking, oh, in the book, it's going to be past tense. So, very rough start. It's been a rough start. I missed Monday, but you just got to keep going. And I just know every day that I do it, it's so much better than if I didn't. Even if it's only a sentence, it's better than if I didn't. So hopefully bear that in mind as we move forward and just get stuff on paper, get it down, whatever it is. If it's an exercise thing, if it's only 5 minutes, a 5-minute walk, do the 5-minute walk. It's going to be better. It's going to accumulate. It's going to bear great fruit in the future, particularly compared to, it may not in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things, it may not be all that much, but it is still so much better than if you didn't do anything at all. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and leave you now, and hopefully we'll talk to you very soon.